The devil is something that humanity had for a long time, and according to multiple books, and my second favorite show ever since the beginning of time. And art wasn't excluded from that. The devil in human art is the depiction of evil in everything. Thousands of times you have seen him. Horns, red skin, a tail with a pointed tip, maybe wings, maybe a leering grin, or just a mischievous man. But before that persona was popularized by the Abrahamic mythology, the devil had multiple forms. In ancient civilizations, we can see in Egypt that evil was a serpent that was trying every day to eat the sun while Seth and Ra fought him. Pazuzu from Mesopotamia was both protector and bringer of pestilence. He wore his image to ward off evil. The monster guarded the door by being more monstrous than what waited outside. And don't let Disney fool you, please. Hades was a cool guy. The closer to evil between the two was actually Zeus. But the picture we have now, the devil or Satan, started being depicted in art as early as it began in scripture, as something surprisingly vague. A tempter, an adversary, an angel who fell, but early Christian art didn't know what to do with him. In some of the oldest depictions, the 6th century Ravenna mosaics, Satan appears almost noble, low-robed angel standing on the opposite of Christ. Not hideous, not monstrous, just on the wrong side. Then, something shifted. As the church expanded and needed to communicate with people who couldn't read, art had to become theology. The devil had to be instantly recognized as evil, and to do that, artists reached for the most terrifying images available. They went and got the goat horns from pagan gods, claws from Roman beasts, and the darkness to represent the void. By the Middle Ages, the template was set, and if you want to understand why medieval artists were that obsessed with the devil, you have to understand fear. Not the abstract fear we talk about today, visceral, immediate, and cosmological fear. The plague, famine, war, and death, fortnight of the apocalypse style, arriving without a warning, and behind it the theologian told you it was the devil's hand. And no one painted the medieval devil more compulsively than Bosch. His hell wasn't of fire and brimstone, it was absurdist, carnivalesque, inventive. Instruments of music used as torture devices, humans were swallowed and exerted. And that figure eating and exerting humans was actually Bosch's devil. The king of hell is a bird-headed figure with a cauldron as a crown and a fancy toilet for a seat. This wasn't the only depiction of the devil eating souls in that age, but was one of many. And you can see that chaos was so elaborate that it sometimes became darkly funny. His works were meticulous, but not from a worship stand, but you can say to exhaust it, to render it so completely that it had no power left in it. But contradictory to Mussolini's saying, "Everything stays," nothing stayed the same forever. The medieval style started dying out with the Renaissance, and a new interpretation was born, built on two things mainly. First of them was the fever that ignited the Renaissance in the first place: anatomy, the thing that Europe was all over, from studying the corpses of the fallen to the Greek gods' bodies saved in marble. And second was Milton's Paradise Lost, especially the verse "better to reign in hell than serve in heaven." You will see why soon. But they were the heart of what came next by the hands of the Renaissance artists and who came after them. Look at Raphael's Saint Michael vanquishing Satan. On the surface level, it's a simple image of good defeating evil, but look more carefully at what Raphael has actually done. Satan is no longer a monster. While he still retains some features like the horns and the eyes, he's a body, muscular, contorted, human in every proportion. He withers beneath Michael's foot with an expression that reads less like demonic rage and more like suffering. Real suffering of consequences, the kind you feel after finding out that you picked up frozen yogurt instead of ice cream. But your tragedy, I mean his tragedy, was captured best by Michelangelo's Last Judgment and the internalization of evil. The scene of hell can be divided into 4 parts: the descending vices, the mouth of hell, Charon's boat, and Midas' hell. Michelangelo's depiction differs from his predecessors in that it is not so obviously divided. Traditionally, the damned were separated by their sins. the envious group together, the gluttonous together, like you would see in Dante's Rings, and in the center would be a giant devil usually eating and defecating the souls of the damned. But Michelangelo wasn't the one to follow arbitrary rules. His Satan doesn't dominate the composition in the traditional way. Instead, Satan disappears, or you might say changes form, appearing as Minos, guiding souls to hell. And this Minos isn't just any Minos. In the classical sense of whoever bothers you, draw them pregnant, Michelangelo had his devil bearing the face of Piaggio di Cesena, the Vatican's master of ceremonies, who had criticized Michelangelo's bold artistic choices. And of course, because my dearest Dürer loves to be different, he took it a further notch from where Michelangelo stopped. He made the devil present, but relevant. Albrecht Dürer's Knight's Death and the Devil had the devil to the side, not a part of the event happening. The talk was mainly between Death and the Knight that had a serious expression focusing on his goal of virtue, not listening to the roars of death or the ticks of the hourglass. And of course, to still keep himself apart, he didn't adopt the devil to be a human, but a goat. But I mean, Dürer is the goat, so he was just putting himself in, doesn't matter. And well, that was the humanization part of the devil's journey. And Dürer, because I like the guy, but where did the other pillars stand? Glad I asked. So Milton's poem Paradise Lost was the next step in the evolution of the devil. Just as Shakespeare had created a psychologically compelling villain in Richard III, Milton's Satan was a powerful and charming leader, a master at manipulation if you might say, and even a potentially sympathetic figure. Despite his prideful refusal to bow to the divine rule, which showed his rebel side, Lucy still wrestles with guilt about what he has done, and doubts the path that he has chosen. When he advances arguments for freedom and autonomy, Satan expresses aspects of Milton's own political philosophy, and with that, Lucy had the part needed for the next evolution, just in time for the Romantics. Milton throughout his life insisted that the poem was a warning against Satan. The Romantics, though, they read it as something else entirely, and honestly, it's hard to blame them. Satan is depicted as a rebel leader who could have very easily gained the trust of the reader, seen an unfortunate situation and given up sympathy to the oppressed. You see him give speeches, rally his fallen angel, suffer, doubt, and endure. The Romantic took it and ran with it. The Romantic movement was defined by revolt against reason, against tradition, against the church, and against the industrial society. And who's better to represent that rebellion than the one figure that looked God in the eyes and said, "No." And from that, three notable people came out: Goya, Robs, and Blake. Goya painted his black paintings in solitude, covering the walls of his own house with visions of darkness, most notably a witch's Sabbath. It wasn't any kind of sermons, it felt more like a confession. Robes, on the other hand, pushed further into eroticism and transgression, making the devil a symbol of everything polite society refused to name, and most importantly, William Blake. He drew Satan as a figure of tragic grandeur. Even with being a very religious man, for Blake, the devil represented suppressed energy, creativity that was crushed by dogma. His Satan was almost sympathetic. In Satan arousing the rebel angels, Satan is pictured on the beach of an inflamed sea attempting to rouse his rebel angels. Satan stands in the upper center of the composition with arms raised, his troubled visage with baleful eyes. Blake represented Satan and his angel as beautiful in appearance, basing them on the nude figures of Michelangelo, and that last detail is what matters the most. Blake went to Michelangelo, the man that portrayed the sacred souls in the flesh of the human body, and used that tradition to paint the figure the church most wanted to degrade. Satan in this image is not monstrous. He is monumental. His arms are raised not as a threat, but in ecstasy. He is breaching. He is awakening, and around him and below him are fallen angels that are stirring, bodies that are coming back to consciousness after the catastrophe of the fall. This is a resurrection painted for the devil. And that is Blake's radical argument in a single image. The energy that raises the dead, that animates broken bodies, that refuses defeat, the energy that does not belong exclusively to the divine. It belongs to whatever refuses to stay down. It belongs to the rebel. With every day moving that humanity spent in the embrace of the devil, we started making him into what our ancestors turned their gods into. A human, but overpowered still. In the modern age, we can see that the devil is still around us, still has the aura of evil when you are closer to religion, but with the time humans have taken, we have been able to strip them away from that. The devil throughout the time it existed was a scapegoat, pun intended, but as he says, you will always hear people saying, "Oh, the devil made me do this." For all eternity, the devil will be invoked to represent human depravity. That was the gift that his father gave him, at least according to him. But as final thoughts, here is what I think. The devil was never really about God's enemy, he was about ours. About the parts of the human nature that terrorize us. Cruelty, desire, pride, the hunger for power, willingness to destroy. Every era drew the devil it deserved. Medieval artists drew a monster because they lived in a world that felt monstrous. Renaissance artists drew a beautiful fallen angel because they had learned to see the beauty in everything, even ruin. And Romantics drew a rebel because they were rebels. Modern artists made him an aesthetic because this is the age we live in. The devil is a mirror. He shows us what we fear about ourselves at any given moment in history, and what we truly desire.